What's up, boys and girls? Lambo here, and today we have another Tryhard Thursday Game of the Day analysis. Today we've had a pretty good stream. We won every single Zerg game up until the very last one, so I think we won like 8 games and then lost one. And we've had a bunch of wins also against decent players like Harstem, Maxpax, Kalazur, but I decided to go with the game against Papi here, who is a 6.2k, 6.3k Protoss. Because I think this game shows, first of all, how to play Hydra Bane and what my plan is with that composition against a standard ground Protoss player. And secondly, I think a lot of, like this was such a standard game that I can explain when and why I make my drones, which is cool as well, which basically just follows the principles of my ZvP early game guide, in case you guys haven't watched those. I think pretty much just watching those multiple times will make your ZvP so much better. If you actually understand all the different things that I explained in that video, you guys should always end up ahead after the early game, simply from just better game understanding than your opponents. Whereas the Protoss theoretically just needs to learn build orders, but the lower the level, the worse these build orders become, the worse the execution becomes, so the easier it also should be for you. And I think the fundamentals should be there with this, game knowledge-wise at least, with the ZvP early game guide. So this replay will be on Pillars, which I think is a good map for mid-game aggression. The third and fourth base are super open. It's also a decent map for late game. Usually the maps that I like for late game are maps where the Protoss needs to spread himself very far after the initial 5 bases. So if we take a look at the bottom left to the minimap right now, the Protoss would take the normal third, right, towards the right, so linearly he would expand, then he would take the triangle base as a 4th base, and then the one to the top left of it as a 5th base. And then the 6th and 7th base is where Zerg usually has a power spike, because you will have mined your 7 bases earlier in the Protoss, and the Protoss is very far away from his static defense, so you can start applying pressure towards these 2 bases without having to steal one of your opponent's bases. So usually if that's possible on maps, I like them for late game pretty much. I also went 7 hatch. I'm sure some of you might have noticed that was actually a misclick, the 17th drone. That's not on purpose. Obviously 16 hatch is better, as I explained a million times before. And yeah, we saw Adept, no second chrono boost. We made 4 links, we see a second Adept, so we go into the main base. We already prepare for losing our Overlord, because more likely than not, this is gonna be a Void Ray. Our opponent in this game does not end up going for a Void Ray, but you should prepare for that anyways against double Adept. Oracle first, especially if the 2 Adepts are not leaving. So whenever there's 2 Adepts and then no third gateway unit, it's usually a Void Ray. Back in the day it used to mean Phoenix very often, but since a Void Ray kind of is a better Phoenix nowadays, with how cheap it is, how fast it is to produce, and how strong it is, usually they don't make Phoenixes anymore, but the game is very similar. One of the things that changes, because it's a Phoenix first, is that I make 1 extra Spore in my main base in time for the Phoenix Oracle. You're gonna see why in a second, because if the Phoenix Oracle arrives in my main base and there are only 2 queens there, there are only 2 queens. One of the queens will get lifted and the Oracle can shift like a bunch of drones really, without being in danger of dying against a single queen. So effectively you're gonna have a minor line with only 1 queen, no Spore Crawler, and that's not good. That's why the way we defend is 3 queens at the third, 2 queens in the main with a Spore, 1 queen in the natural with a Spore, and then the 2 queens in the main. You just gotta watch out for where your opponent is coming from. The other thing that changes compared to the Void Ray is that our Overlords don't have to be exactly above our Spore Crawlers. They can be a little bit outside of our base still, so we can see where he's coming from and then react with the queens, right? So very important stuff. I'm making a bunch of Zerglings to scout right now. Focus fire obviously on the Oracle, not on the Phoenix. We lost 1 drone there, which is fine. We see the Nexus has started before 4 minutes based on the HP that he's had. And that already rules out a couple of builds, so For example, the most common openers where they still go for Phoenix is 2 Stargate Phoenix afterwards, or Icon Drop, both of which are not really an option anymore. Right now it could be a delayed Glaives push, or just a standard third base. Either way, what we're doing is we're just going into a lair with a Baneling Nest and an Evolution Chamber. And I want you guys to be honest right now. I'm on 2 gas, and this is on purpose. Do you guys, because every single time I watch a replay on the Paper Tuesday analysis, you guys take your gases too early, and I'm telling you, it's way better to take them a little bit too late than too early. So in this game, which is actually one of the reasons why I selected it, you can see that I'm taking my extra gases after I have more than 16 Jones on a mineral line, so I don't lose any mineral income. This allows me to get a much faster forward base, and just it transitions way nicer. Like if I have a bunch of extra gas right now but less minerals, it doesn't actually help me with anything, because all the initial production, all the initial economy and tech is mostly mineral heavy. And that's what you guys need to understand. You guys all take your gases too early, I think, without an exception. I don't think I have seen a single Masters League or below player who actually took his gases too late. So in the early game, maybe take it rather a little bit too late than too early, because the mineral income is what is most important. We have a very small supply block here, but I think we already saw a sentry. Yep, the queens are still in position. And we can drone. You could see me hovering above the top right of my screen. I saw a bunch of sentries, more zealots warping in. We went up to 80 drones immediately. Now, why is this safe? I saw the amount of units that my opponent had, and I'm constantly active with the Zerglings. We also know there is no war prisoner or stuff that's headed out, because we have our Zerglings patrolling to the left of top left of his main base, and we have all the exits covered. This allows me to just drone up to 80 easily, because we had a good early game. So if I lost 10 drones, I would not have went up to 80, but rather to 70 drones. I hope that makes sense. But because we had a good early game, we can go to a nice drone count of like 80, at this point 84 or so. If he already pushed out, I would have not made an extra run of drones, but since he's still at home and I can scout that, I keep running around with the Zerglings. This is what is not going to be possible for you guys most likely. But this is the way I'm scouting, just making Zerglings. I also made an Overseer, but the Zerglings already gave me enough information, really. I see that it's obviously charged lot, now I see there's actually a second Robo, which was very interesting. This is why I actually went in with the Overseer, to check if he goes for a very weird Colossus transition. Icon Immortal Charger does not transition well into Colossus whatsoever, but I still wanted to confirm, and there was Storm on the way, so now I know we can make even more drones and go into a hive if we care to do so. So up until now our game plan is just to go up to as many drones as possible, and my overall game plan this game is to just go up to hive, Greater Spire, and just try to kill his workers, kill his eco line, and just try to outmaneuver my opponent more or less. So I'm just starting to do run-bys here. I sent in 3 Banelings, not 2, because I saw there was a Phoenix. I scouted ahead for it, and I saw there was a Phoenix, so I could have lifted one of the 3 Banelings, and 2 obviously you need to kill. Probes, since I don't have the +2 upgrade yet, in which case it starts one-shotting the probes. And now we send another small Baneling run-by, since our opponent did not seem very well prepared for it. And we can see a cannon that is not done morphing in yet, or warping in yet. And now at the same time we start attacking at the left side, because very often what happens is your opponent will move everything towards the right side, and then you can go in again on the left. And now we do the exact opposite. We already knew he was going to respond with most of his army there, so we split a lot of Banelings towards his fort base. And this is really just common sense, but this is not actually as easy as it seems. But if you start splitting up your army, these moves will come to you naturally over time. You just need to anticipate where your opponent is heading before you really see it, depending on your army movement, right? It's usually very obvious how they're going to respond, especially non-super top level Protoss players. Like if I'm playing against Showtime and I do this, he is going to have an Archon and maybe a Stasis Ward at the third, and maybe a couple of extra Stalkers, so the Baneling run-by doesn't do anything. So this time I figured, okay, maybe he has a bunch of defenses now against the Banelings, which he does, so I'm sending some Hydras as well to bust this. And now that I know his army will respond again, I'm starting to attack the left side at the same time once again. and see what happens. He's out of position, he didn't entirely look at his army, which is fine. Still trades relatively effectively with the shield batteries next to his army, but we managed to take out the base. At this point we're at 7 gas with 5 mineral lines, almost fully saturated. And that's kind of where we start. And at this point I know my opponent has to all-in us, because we're simply outmining him too much to go into like... He can't just go into carriers or anything like that. You can't do that to begin with on 6 gas. So he's gonna have to attack us. We morph the Greater Spire. At this point, I know I still have a lot of time to kill. The later I take the engagement, the better, because I'm simply outmining him a lot, which means I'm just gonna have more banelings and more reinforcements, whereas his reinforcements will slow down severely. Now I sent a small counterattack. This was meant to actually kill his entire economy while I'm defending, because I thought he would just ignore it and walk across the map, but he actually went back. So we lost some units here, but it bought us a lot of time. And as I said before, even though this trade was terrible of the run by, in this time we're mining so much more than him that it really doesn't matter. And you can see our army being more and more baneling heavy. So we're using all the gas that we have into banelings, and we're just posturing. Just make sure to fight on creep, and whenever you're on creep with Hydra Bane, it should not be possible for your opponent to kill you. So yeah, I also in this case could have morphed Brutaloids, but it honestly was not reasonable to assume that my opponent would go back and take it so slow. So at this point he's gonna start attacking from the left side, and if I want to play it very safe, probably like the absolute safest way to play is run by Zerglings with these banelings. Kill the entire base, the production there, and then give up this base, which I was ready to do anyways. But I took a look at his army, and first I wanted to set up a flank with the banelings to kill his High Templars, and I realized he morphed everything into Archons because he was on creep, which basically means that the banelings connect anyways, and all you do at this point is move command the banelings. If I aim with these banelings I would lose this fight. Move commanding so they tank extra damage, and always morph in new banelings, also very important, so that if you move all the banelings forward into the Archons, you might blow up the Archons, especially because the Hydras will also attack the Archons, but you always want to have some banelings still ready for the Zealots that come afterwards. Like usually the reinforcements from Zerg are Zerglings and the reinforcements from Protoss are Zealots, and when the banelings die, which the banelings function as tanks for the Hydras, then the Hydras trade very, very poorly against Zealots, but obviously because we played the game well so far, we could simply crush this on 6 base against what seemed to be a 3 base all in here. Also we broke 400 EPM that game, played very fast. So I think that was a very clean game, crew spread wise as well. It was pretty good. I'm gonna obviously include this replay in the description below, but I just wanted to show you guys simple maneuvers with Hydra Bane, the way you go to Hive. If you don't like attacking because you're not good at multitasking or anything like that and you want to play Hydra Bane, then go for an earlier Hive and an earlier Greater Spire. This makes it so it's safer. Whereas if you're good with trading, maybe you can delay the Hive even a little bit more and try to make more stuff happen. Either way, I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys have any questions about any of the decisions that I made this game or why I did what I did, feel free to ask in the comments, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.